So, hello and welcome back to my continued review of War Between the Land and the Sea. We are now covering episode 3, The Deep. And this is again pretty much following on immediately from the previous one, where Salt proposed that the next meeting place would be, I think it's the Mariana Trench, one of the deepest places on Earth, but underwater. So the early portion of the episode is just going through like the prep for that, or what time they have to be able to do that, and discussing the severe dangers that are associated with deep oceanic dives. So, I mean, all you'd have to do is think of the Titan sub, and you kind of get an idea of what kind of dangers they might be facing. Mainly intense pressure from the outside. The deeper you get, for those who don't know, the greater the pressure is on anything, including a submersible. So that's the main danger that they're facing. And we have this kind of wonderful cut back and forth with the setting out for the mission, and then Barkley in the hotel room with his ex-partner and Kirby, and I think initially it's his ex-partner talking about the main dangers of it, and then you kind of like you've got a side room where Kirby's watching a TV screen. They're also discussing it. Although, as much as they're clearly an older child, if you like, it still wouldn't be something that I'd probably want to have on in the flat in the hotel room, in order to try and create as nice a environment as possible. But there is this wonderful kind of breakdown moment with Barkley. It's after there's quite a kind of tail flip where Kirby's talking about what TikTok's saying about their dad, and has like a storm off because they're saying that he's a traitor, and that uh, either the Aqua Folk or will kill them, or humanity will kill itself, which I suppose is not untrue if we're looking at the latter of that. And storms off, and then there's this wonderful moment between Barkley and his ex-partner where he does finally kind of break down a bit and show how concerned and worried he is, which is then when Kirby comes back and apologizes, and they have this hug moment, and it's very brief because he then kind of like coughs it away and straightens up and tries to look as together as he can. There is also another moment during the training session where General Piers comes up to Barkley, because apparently he's been ignoring getting like his medical checks, and he's sat on the side of a pool, and he ignores the general completely, and like submerges himself in the water, almost like just falls in, and has this brilliant underwater kind of scream moment. But they go ahead with the mission, and there's several other members on board, including some I don't think we've seen. One of which is Ted Campbell, who we will come back to. During all of this, also throughout the episode, it's established that Kate just isn't resting at all. Kate, being Kate, I suppose, just wants to kind of be there for the whole thing, and make sure that she can kind of orchestrate and direct it as best they can. And there's this fantastic moment with her, and I always forget his name, which is not great for this episode because spoiler alert, it is his last. Interestingly, I don't think he's listed on the main cast, which is odd, but we move. Let's just say Captain Pretty, which is what I think. That other YouTube channel that does Doctor Who Culture, refer to him as. So he comes over, and she's kind of shaking with the fatigue of it, and he says he kind of threatens to report her if she doesn't go home, to which he finds like a secret ultimatum where she's like, oh yeah, I can just work from home. And the submersible is this incredibly terrifying, just essentially like a cannonball that they're sitting in, and they're all bolted into. Initially, our boy Ted Campbell is quite is quite kind of stoic and doesn't seem phased by any of it. In fact, some of the others are pointing out or asking him if he's not phased about this whole endeavor. And I think someone says, "Oh, we're alone down there." To which he rebuttals, "We're not alone at all. We're a team." Heavily disarming, especially for what we get at the end of the episode. But yeah, so they are held over the water by a crane and then dropped in, and just the way that this is like sound design, the kind of creaking and cracking on the submersible as they're going down, very accurate to what I imagine it must be like to go down in a submersible, even half the depth that they end up going. And yeah, so I'm going to be skipping back and forth because there's a lot going on in this episode. We get talks with Kate and the Prime Minister and some of the other authorities, including the French lass, I think, who leaked the picture of Barkley initially to the press, talking about what the next step should be. But everyone else is very much of the, oh, this is just kind of like for show. We're actually going to focus on something else. We're going to focus on weaponry and things like that instead of diplomatic talks. To which obviously Kate isn't happy about. And then there is a far more private conversation between, I think it's the PM and someone else, talking about this kind of fallback measure that they can do. And I think this has been down to the biological samples that were stolen in the earlier episodes. There's this kind of, I think I alluded it to earlier, this kind of up and down, very uncomfortable series of conversations that happen within the submersible, where from one point they're talking about what they're going to have for dinner when they return to the ship, and the other time they're talking about, like, especially Ted, who at this point has started to kind of almost break down on several occasions, just says like, oh, we're just like meat sacks and they've stuck us in a diving suit. Someone else mentions, oh, if the sub were to implode, then we probably wouldn't know about it because it'd be so quick. And the poor general just, I think there is one point where he's just like, shut up. Because it must be, he's meant to be the one who's remaining stoic, but you can see the sweat on him. He's panicking as well. And right, so let's go back to Kate's apartment, and there is between her and Captain Pretty, and it's not, I don't know, because I do see Kate's side more than his, and I can understand that, if you are in a relationship, it must be very difficult if the person that you're with constantly is about work and finds very little time for an affectionate evening, especially if while you're at work you have to kind of hide that you're with that person. He's asking, will there ever be a point where we don't have to hide? She quite rightly, I think, in my opinion, says, there's far bigger fish to fry here. Like, can this wait? I mean, he does do quite a sweet rebuttal where she's saying something like she doesn't have time to think about them, but he says he thinks about them all the time. And this is more or less where we see the light of the crosshairs go over Kate, and I think it's a single bullet's fired through the window, and Captain Pretty jumps in front of Kate to bring her down. And there's this very harrowing shot where she kind of like sits up and she's got blood all over her hands, and Captain Pretty's there as well, and he's kind of wide-eyed. But yeah, let's touch in more with the submersible side of things first of all before we go back. There's a point where it was almost like the descent stops and then suddenly it accelerates like twofold, because something apparently is dragging them down, and at that point they lose communication with unit. And it's such a harrowing scene where you can hear like stuff going on with the bulkhead door, and then it's just kind of torn open, and there's just that crushing blackness from the outside. We have no idea what's outside. and no one really wants to go first, so it is up to the general to take point with that. Um, and they step outside into this magnificent kind of cave structure where you've got like a kind of bioluminescent pulsing ceiling, and you can see what I think are whales swimming above it. And he's talking about the fact that the temperature is perfect, and not only is it breathable, but that's also perfect too, and that obviously being impossible where they are. And it turns out that Salt has essentially made an environment for them that's suitable for them, so that they can continue diplomatic talks. Um, it's interesting that although they're all hesitant, it is revealed that I think it is Barkley first takes off his helmet. Everyone else can, but our boy Ted decides not to. It's also worth mentioning earlier in the episode when they're like flying to the ship where they're going to be dunked into the sea. Ted's like clutching this briefcase, and Barkley does inquire as to what it is, and he takes out this kind of what looks like a very twistable. It's got like little divisions in it, but it's a small globe. Quite rightly so. Some of the other members are like, well, what the hell are they going to do with that? But it's quite a nice point that he throws back that they probably wouldn't have ever have observed the planet that they exist on from this classic perspective from space. So it's something entirely unique for them. But yeah, they're going through the cave system and kind of deducing certain parts about it. But there is a point where Salt and Barkley get purposely separated from the group, and they have this quite intimate moment where Salt touches his skin, and he does so with her. Although he does talk about what he feels, but is wearing quite thick gloves, whereas she's not. So I don't know whether he's just the emotion intensity of that scene is more what he's describing as opposed to physical touch. But they do then meet up, and there is this moment just before the general turns up where it does look like Barkley's going to lean in for a kiss. Lots of people have said this has come about quite quickly, and I don't necessarily disagree. However, I mean, it's not unheard of that that people can fall in love with these very quickly with these very powerful creatures. When I say sorry, that I'm talking about creatures within the context of War Between the Land and the Sea. What I mean is it's not unknown for people to idolize a powerful presenting individual, and to fall for them quite quickly because they have this kind of this status and this presence about them, which I'm guessing is what's happening here. And also a certain respect that I suppose Barkley has for Salt. But they are interrupted, and they continue on, and they reach this fantastic kind of balcony area that overlooks all these I presume like representatives of different parts of the ocean. And interestingly, someone I haven't confirmed it, but one of the other Doctor Who YouTube channels did point out that what they can kind of see in the darkness, I think they had to increase the brightness, are some Jodie Whittaker era style aquatic folk. And it's just nice to see the kind of diversity there, and see the references to the different designs. But yeah, I mean, they get there, and talks aren't even allowed to begin, because I don't know if I've skipped over much. I know I'm kind of rattling through it, but Ted decides this is the moment to give the gift, and this is intercut with what's going on with Kate. So it actually turns out that Captain Pretty is the one who has been mortally wounded by the gunshot, and just the way that he acts is a very very good bit of acting where he's just kind of continuing to be quite wide-eyed and quite unresponsive, and Kate's kind of pleading with him to hang on. She was on the phone to the rest of unit, but obviously the gunshot caused her to kind of drop the phone and to deal with that. And while that's going on, it turns out that that Ted is actually also part of this kind of anti let's have peace dealings movement, or this solution that they put into place. And this globe is not so much a globe as it is a sound frequent bomb. And he deposits that, he throws that, and that's kind of where the episode ends, with a big old flash. But thank you so much for listening to this one again. Sorry, it's been a bit of a quick one, but we'll dive hopefully very soon into episode 4. But general thoughts, this was again a very well paced and high intensity episode, keeping up the standard of this brilliant series so far. But hopefully episode 4 will be just as good.